welcome out to another episode of Drake's Dungeon, the podcast brought to you straight from the War Commander team to give you all the news that we can come at you that's appropriate to share. We don't want to give too much cool stuff away too early. This month joining me is a data analyst for our team. He has been with the team now, I want to say close to 6 months, about half a year. He's been doing amazing work in helping us all over the place, and he'll definitely get to talk more about that. But I would like to welcome Fire Moose. Welcome, Fire Moose.
Hello. Thank you, Drake, for having me.
Yeah, we were talking about it before, but I think you have the coolest name because it sounds both really metal and incredibly Canadian at the same time.
It's my two favorite things.
So, as always with these interviews, we always check in on what came out this last month first, just to give some people an insight into some of the new recent things. So, have you had a chance to get hands on with the Gorgon yet?
I have. It's growing on me fast.
Yeah, I've been using it. I thought at first I was only going to use a few of them per platoon, but then I made one platoon with 8 of them, and I was very surprised to see how much damage I could do very quickly with that.
Yeah, they definitely benefit heavily from having a tankier unit up front and then a bunch of them in the background.
Yeah, definitely. Where I feel they don't have the same range as our last unit, the controller. When you get them really, really up close, they can be just as brutal. So yeah, using that tankier unit to absorb some of that damage and then bringing the Gorgons in the back, it's trouble.
Yeah, I've been using the Hive a lot, and then probably with Cerberus or Len to be my tanks, and then a herd of Gorgons in the background.
Yeah, that's a good call. Spam the battlefield with a bunch of drones as well.
Yep.
Yeah,
drone power.
Right on. Drone's the name of the game lately. We've been doing a lot of fun stuff with drones.
Yeah, it's definitely a big shift from what it was before I got here.
Well, you're a data analyst.
I am.
What does that mean? What exactly is a data analyst?
Well, for this game team, I specifically look at client logs produced by the game that help us get an insight in on activities that players do. Everything from error messages to the results of a battle that a player might enter. And then I help connect our designers with the data, and then I present them with views that allow them to make decisions based on what the players are doing and what they and many pain points as well.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically with vent tuning is another area that I'm heavily involved with.
Yeah, I will say, one thing that we do on the first day of the event after it's been live for a few hours is a bunch of people from all the departments, we get together for a meeting that you basically lead, where you kind of show us the data of what's going on in the event.
Yeah, I like to look at the damage numbers, specifically with the damage received from the players, because no one likes getting injured, but we do have to make the event challenging so that players have a reason to strive to do a better job every event. And I like to help tune it so that we try not to prevent players from experiencing the content by it being too difficult. And sometimes we have to reduce the damage, and then other times a bug makes it into the live event, and we'll have to patch it and increase damage.
Right. I think people will be happy to know that most of the time we end up tuning down. We usually make things, we tend to make things a little bit easier once we see, how players are responding to it. But yeah, you're right. There's those occasions where it's well, there should be some challenge. There shouldn't be something where a player is able to just sleep their way through a target.
Yeah, it's a fine line. We don't want to make the missions difficult on purpose. We don't want to make them overwhelmingly challenge or to the point where players are seeing entire platoons always completely destroyed by the mission targets. But we do get a lot of feedback saying that players want a challenge. So hopefully in the future we have a new event structure coming that should allow us to introduce multiple difficulties um, to help allow us to cater towards players that want a harder experience and players that might not want such a brutal nightmare experience.
So basically, your job is to help find the sweet spot, the spot where like players are getting the challenge that they're looking for, but they're not overwhelmed to the point where it's like frustrating.
Yeah, difficulty in games is probably one of the hardest aspects because we can test it as much as we can here, but once you go live to thousands and thousands of players, you see combinations that we didn't test for. There's all sorts of anomalies that arise, and it's tough to include it to make a fun experience for everyone. So we try our best to cater towards the majority of our players and make a fun but somewhat difficult event.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you look at the damage taken from players. What are some other things that you look at when it comes to event tuning?
With event tuning, we do look at how much damage different units are doing to see if potentially a unit has too many resistances to the current units that are out. We don't want to make it so that units are incapable of killing targets.
You specifically mean like the bad guy units, like the
Yeah,
enemy units? Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes their resistances can make them far more powerful than we intended, and we don't want to cause a lot of pain. A good example of that would be the Gen 2 power plant. That came in right around when I started, and unfortunately, the armor type on it makes it very tough to beat. But hopefully, going forward, that it's going to start being normalized to being a regular building for players. So there's no more 5-minute missions
Yeah.
where you're just watching the advanced power plant get destroyed.
Yeah, I remember that a few battles where it's like you can destroy everything and all you have left is that power plant and you have an entire platoon just picking away at it over time.
Yeah, that's it's not ideal and it's not fun, and we actively try to prevent that from happening whenever we can.
So, you've mentioned a little bit about how we're going to be changing the way things go with events. Braden spoke to it when he was on a few months ago, how Event 102, we're going to start seeing some changes. What role do you play in planning ahead for these changes for not just events but maybe features in general going forward?
So I provide historic information for players, what players have done in the past events. So specifically with Braden, we were looking at damage received over all the past events and how might we introduce difficulty levels to the new event going forward. So I'm going to assist mainly on damage tuning. That'll be my big influence of the change. We're going to try to make different difficulties. One that's much harder, and then one that'll be probably on par with what our current events are.
Okay, so you're basically going to be looking at historically how much damage players usually do, how much damage players take, and kind of using that data to help tune these new tracks that we're going to be implementing for different tiers of players.
Yeah, that's one of the big ones with the new event structure coming out. The other big point I'll probably end up helping with is tech that comes out. So if we see a unit is underperforming and it's not meeting our expectations for damage or popularity and stuff like that, we'll definitely make a push to introduce some tech that'll raise its power level so that it is a good unit as we intended.
That's a good point that I don't think we've touched on in a lot of our past episodes, is that when a unit comes out, that's not the end of the unit. Like let's say hypothetically we release a unit that players really just don't find useful, or don't really end up adopting that well. That information goes into how we develop the tech to make it more powerful, to make it a little bit more appealing and useful to players.
Yeah, we use the data provided from these logs to help us figure out if the unit is far too powerful or under performing. It's a big part of it. It'll help um, make units stronger. We try to take what we learn from past units and try to prevent that from happening in the future ones as well.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I like about your position, what the work that you do, is how it kind of complements and works with the work that I do on my end, where a lot of the stuff I'm doing is collecting feedback, qualitative feedback from players, across forums, across customer support tickets, across Discord, things like that, where I'm kind of getting their feelings and thoughts about how they're looking at an event or a new unit or tech, where you get to look at the quantitative side of it and actually look at the numbers and how we kind of come together and be like, do your numbers line up with what I'm hearing? And we can kind of see, where things might differ. We might see where things are similar, and it kind of helps create a big picture, if you will, of how like the community in general is really responding to different things.
Yeah, it's very important to have our roles together because sometimes the data doesn't tell the full picture. If we release something that players don't like but performs well, I might not know that they don't like it. So that's
Mhm.
where both the community feedback that we do receive and the actual analytics that we receive, they're both incredibly valuable to the game designers when they are designing a new unit or trying to balance the event.
Well, on the other side of the coin, I might have people in the community who are very vocal about not liking something, but your data shows no, the adoption rate of this is huge. And, it kind of, we'll have kind of things that conflict where, a couple people might be very passionate about not liking something, but your data might show like players seem to be loving this. They seem to be really using this and getting into it. So, it really is kind of interesting how these positions kind of work together.
Yeah, it's the contrast sometimes is good, and it'll make us second guess sometimes what we see in the numbers, or sometimes it'll make us not worry if we see a few very loud players. We might know that it's just those individual players that are upset about a change, or or they might really like it. And that way we're not biased by a few people's decisions. It lets us take a picture of the whole War Commander community and try to make a decision that's best for everyone.
Yeah. Well, that's ultimately, I think it goes hand in hand with, one of the things that we always try to do, which is whether it be in listening to the community on our channels or looking at the numbers. Ultimately, we're trying to hear what you guys are saying and use that to make the best game possible.
Yeah, it all comes back to the community. It's why we all do it. And War Commander's a fun game. I enjoy playing it, and a lot of our players do too. And I think that our community is why we do what we do, and I want to do the best job that I can to help provide the best game experience for them.
Well, Fire Moose, thank you for taking the time out of your day and joining the show. Um, you guys, Fire Moose is often on Discord. He'll pop in and answer questions and things like that from time to time. So if you see him online, feel free to say hi to him. Other than that, yeah, thank you for stopping by. We'll be back again next month with another episode of Drake's Dungeon. Until then, thank you so much for playing War Commander. Bye.